Every book has a moment before the page. A decision, a risk, a story worth telling. This is Authors After Action. Conversations with authors about the journey, the work, and the lessons learned along the way.
Welcome, everybody, to Authors After Action. I'm Don, and I'm excited to bring in Miss Nina Amir. She is a best-selling author, certified high-performance coach who walked away from external success to reclaim her soul's purpose. A former industry-made writer who lost herself and then rebuilt her life through personal and spiritual alignment. Founder of the transformational program for writer and creators seeking meaning, not just metrics, bridges personal growth and spirituality, showing how inner work unlocks authenticity and creativity. Let's welcome Miss Nina to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Awesome. So let's dive a little bit back. What brought you into writing?
Oh my, I started writing stories about horses when I was like in grade school, elementary school, and continued journaling and things like that. I don't remember writing stories so much, but I did that all the way through middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And then by high school, I was still journaling and all, but I revived the defunct school newspaper. I started writing for a school news column for the local newspaper, and told my mother that what I wanted to do as a career was to be a novelist. I read lots of fiction at the time. And she, in her way, said, "Hey, Nina, only really, really good writers can make a living as novelists." At the time, I took that to mean that I wasn't a good enough writer, but really she was just being practical and wanted me to have a career that paid me, paid my rent. And so I was still in high school, and I took a class with a very charismatic teacher who taught journalism. And I realized that there was a whole nother way to make a living as a writer, and I could write for publications. And I actually really liked magazines. Like I was, I would buy magazines like Self, which that always pops into my head, because Self magazine had all these kind of self-help articles, right? So it was focused on helping readers in some way, or inspiring them, or motivating them. And I liked that. And so I decided to become a magazine journalist, and I went off to Syracuse University and I got a degree in magazine journalism, where they also taught you how to design and edit and all that stuff, and thought I'll go off to New York City and I will be a magazine writer and editor. And then I discovered that when you first get a job with a big glossy magazine in Manhattan, you are a receptionist. And you get coffee and you answer the phones. And I said, 4 years of being in college and every summer getting clips, as we call them, right? And so I would go work for free and get these clips that had my byline. I was like, 4 years of that, I'm not answering phones and getting coffee.
Yeah.
And so from there, I went and I got, I moved, instead of looking for jobs in Manhattan, I looked for jobs outside Manhattan, and I started to work for regional publications. And that work with magazines then moved me into the world of book publishing, not just magazine publishing, because somebody asked me if I would edit their nonfiction book. And I remembered my professor in college saying, if you can write a magazine article, you can write a book, because a nonfiction book is just a string of articles all on the same topic. And so I said, yes, I'll edit your book. And after editing a few books, I said, I'm going to write my own books. So that's how it all started.
I think that's a path that was meant to happen because that's not, by accident. Going to,
No.
you pursued a career, and the dedication and the resiliency took you into the career that you wanted in the way that you wanted it. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
What
and
did you?
interestingly enough, at Syracuse in the magazine department, you couldn't, well, what they required was they didn't call it a minor. They
Mhm.
called it a concentration. I think it was just shy of having a minor in a subject area, but they wanted you to have a concentration because they said you need to have a topic you can write about if necessary. So, like, I have a friend, she's a science writer, right? So, I actually studied psychology. That was my concentration because I said if I can't be a writer, then I'll be a therapist because I was always interested in how people work, which was why, I liked all the self-help articles, right? Because they were
Yeah.
always telling readers, kind of the psychology behind what they were doing and how to develop new habits and whatever, and why they had so many bad relationships. So, I liked that. I liked figuring out how people worked. And, when you say it happened the way I chose it to happen or it was meant to happen, I think that was true for me with the concentration too, because I never became a therapist, but became a certified high performance coach and a
Mhm.
transformational coach. And even as an author coach, I help people with their personal growth.
Yeah.
The transformational coaching involves both personal and spiritual growth. But yeah, so that led me along that path.
Well, let me ask you this: when clients come to you, because I'm sure you get it everywhere you go. As soon as they find out that you're involved in publishing or whatever, it's, hey, I've got a book. Please read it. I'm sure you get so many things shoved in your face. What is the most common mistake that young authors are making?
Hmm. Uh, are we sticking with nonfiction or also fiction, which is not my 100% expertise
Not
area?
nonfiction or fiction, either one.
Okay. Well, for nonfiction, so like I said, fiction, I know a lot about fiction, but I'm not a nonfiction, I'm a fiction expert. I'm more of a nonfiction expert. But from a fiction standpoint, the mistake most newbies make is that they don't put any effort into learning the business of being a writer and an author. They don't realize they have to have what we call an author platform, which is a built-in readership for your book in your target market, which takes time,
Yeah.
years to build. So they're not doing that, which is a business aspect, because if you don't have an audience, then when you go to promote your book, which is also part of the business of publishing, there's no one listening to you. There's no one
Right.
paying any attention. And so your book sales are going to be low. And that can be the same even if you have this audience, this built-in audience, but it helps. And the nonfiction writers and the fiction writers don't approach this as a business, but publishing is a business. If you self-publish, you open a publishing company, your own,
Yep.
and you have to pay contractors and who are going to design and edit for you, and you have to pay taxes, and there's all that stuff, right? And there's still the marketing and promotion. And if you traditionally publish, you're basically for nonfiction, your book proposal is the way that you are courting um, a venture capital partner,
Hmm.
because the publisher is a venture capital partner for an author. In other words, you're going to someone to say, will you back my product? And the product is the book. And they're going to business with you. And they not only want you to be able to write well and have a good idea, they want you to be a good business partner, which means that you're going to promote the book. You're going to do all the things necessary to make it successful. And if you self publish, you back your own book. So you still have to approach it in the same way. So I think that that's the biggest thing, the not approaching it as a business.
Yeah, a lot of that is the same thing I give young podcasters when they ask me, because that same thing applies. Everybody wants to release their first episode and then monetize. And who are you going to monetize to? You had 10 people download your first episode, and writing is the same way. The books I have wrote because I'm passionate about a certain topic, and that's mental health. My first book was about me through the military. I self-published it because it was originally just a document to my family to explain what I went through. I had no expectations of ever even publishing a book. And so my daughter asked me to do it, so I did it that way. But I had zero focus in trying to make money from it. That wasn't the point. I gave away more books than I sold. And a lot of people that want to do this full time, exactly like you said, I've never heard people put it as the publisher is a venture capitalist. But you're exactly right.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way either, but I lived in California for 20 years, and my husband worked for a lot of startups and as the finance guy. And I watched what he was doing, how the companies would have to go and find backers and whatever. And I thought that is exactly what the writers do. But if it hadn't been for him working in that industry, I wouldn't have seen that. And I also probably wouldn't have had as clear an idea about this being a business.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah. And, I think at the end of the day, what Amazon did and everything by making the self-publishing was great for them. It was a great business model for them. The people that use the product forget all those other things that you just mentioned. You're going to go into this with no reach. You're going to go into this with no already designed clientele, product, readers, any of that stuff. And you're going to take on 100% of the financial responsibility.
Right. And they're not looking at that.
No.
They're saying, oh, I'm going to self-publish. So let's just talk about self-publishing, right? They're saying, I'm going to self-publish my book and I'm going to make all the money. But they're also going to put all their money into it.
Yep.
So people ask me quite often why I like traditional publishing, because I also self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I like traditional publishing is because I do have a venture capital partner. Not every traditional publishing deal means you get money up front in advance. Right. But an advance is an advance on projected sales.
Yes.
Right. So if you get $2,000, they're only projecting that you'll sell enough books to cover $2,000.
Yes.
Right. But if you're self-publishing, then the issue is they're not even thinking about that. They're just going, I'm going to put my book up on Amazon and I'm going to make money.
Yep.
But they have to pay for editing. And if they don't, they're making that's the other big mistake, that people don't pay for professional editing, a line editor and a developmental editor, and they don't pay for professional cover design. But let's say you do pay for those things. Yeah. Now you have expenses. And if you decide to get help with social media or with marketing or any of those things, you have expenses. And if your book doesn't sell, you're out the money, not the publisher. Yep. I like traditional publishing because it's the publisher who's out the money.
Yeah. And they have subject matter experts in SEO and all the words and everything that are so important with Amazon. Some of the stuff that I've seen other people do is they don't go back and edit their categories. And, as their book ages, they just, once it's on there, they forget it. Right. And so does Amazon.
Right. And publishers are at fault of that too. I mean, unless you go back to your publisher and say, hey, I'd like you to relook at my categories. Yeah. And publishers don't know everything. But the other thing I like about traditional publishing is that you have publishing professionals to help you.
Yeah.
Right. You're getting decent editors. You're getting a decent cover design. You have people who know that SEO and all that stuff. But that doesn't mean there are no problems. So with my new book, Change the World One Book at a Time, we've had a heck of a time with the editorial reviews on Amazon. So first they, highlighted someone I didn't want highlighted. And I said, well, you need to get her off of there and you need to put this other guy on there because Seth Godin is a big...
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media. where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages, real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
Marketing pro, and he actually wrote a blurb for my book. And so I was like, that needs to be at the top.
Yeah.
Well, they tried to fix that, and then suddenly there were 2 copies of all. I have a lot of these blurbs, testimonials you get before the book is published. I have a lot of them. And suddenly there were 2 sets of them. And one had the names highlighted, the other one didn't. Then the more we messed with it, the more, or I tried to get Amazon involved, and suddenly, I don't know, it's just been a huge mess. And you would think a publisher could handle that, because as a self-publisher, as you know, we handle that ourselves. We go in and we put those in one by one, and I was like, just delete them all and start over, right? So the publishers don't know everything.
Yeah.
And they also had Change the World One Book at a Time in a very political category. And while, yes, there are probably some activists, in there who might want to write a book for change, it wasn't a good category for me for the book. And I said something, and I don't know, now it's gone. So maybe they deleted it, or maybe it fell so low in the list that Amazon deleted it. I don't know, but you do at least have this team, a built-in team. You don't have to go looking for people to help you.
Right. And it also helps you with being able to make more content, because while somebody's doing the editing process and the cover process and all that other stuff, it allows you to focus on your next project.
It does. The other benefit that a lot of self-published authors don't realize is that if you traditionally publish, your book ends up in bookstores. Not in every bookstore, like the small bookstores may not buy it, but Barnes and Noble is going to carry it, right? And so that's a distribution element that you don't get as a self-published author. You can publish. I always tell people not to just publish on Amazon. I prefer something like IngramSpark if you're going to self-publish. And then you're in the Ingram catalog. And so your local bookstore can actually order your book. Or someone could go into Barnes and Noble and say, I really would like Nina's new book. Could you order it for me? And Barnes and Noble will, because it's there in their catalog. And you don't get that if you just publish on Amazon. And so I highly recommend that wherever you're going to self-publish, that you do it where you get into that Ingram catalog. But even with that, the bookstores aren't necessarily going to just stock your books.
Right.
But they do if you traditionally publish.
And I think a lot of authors that are going that route misunderstand that, because they see it, wherever they went through to do their print on demand, whether it be IngramSpark or draft to digital or whoever. You see that it says that your book's going to be sold with Barnes and Nobles and all these big people. But what they fail to realize is that just means that you can order it on Barnes and Nobles online. It's going to get printed and mailed to them. You can't go into Barnes and Noble and pick it up.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, it makes a difference. And then, another big mistake I think that newbie or aspiring authors make is when they decide that they want to self-publish, they end up wanting what I would call assisted self-publishing. But really what ends up happening is they pay a ton of money for a vanity publisher. And they don't realize it's a vanity publisher because they're not called that anymore. They're called subsidy publishing houses, or, you can find tons of them now. And it's hard to tell the difference. And I admit, I don't always know the difference between a vanity publisher and what we call a hybrid publisher. So you might say that my publisher, because they didn't give me an advance, is a hybrid publisher. Maybe. But if you're paying money to the publisher, that is not really hybrid publishing. And I know somebody who runs a very successful publishing company, and I've always just said, she's a hybrid publisher. Go to her. She's good. Like, you're gonna pay her money, but this is legit, and your book will be in the bookstores. She has the distribution, all that stuff. And then somebody said to me, yeah, but she's really just another vanity press because you're paying to get published. And so you have to be very careful about going out there and spending that kind of money. And most of the people are paying like 10K, and they're getting a lousy job and having tons of problems in the process.
And still not getting any reach, because
No,
they're not gonna pay the marketing part of it. You're paid them for the editing, the cover, and so forth, and to publish it. And once it's published, they're done. Hands are off, and
that's right.
it's on you.
The only thing is you might get distribution into bookstores, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But most of the people who are spending that kind of money would be better off just saying, I may not know how to do it, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And just, go to Draft to Digital, go to IngramSpark, go even just to Amazon, and just do it yourself.
Yes.
Hire the editors. You can do it. Look, my last book that I put out, self-published, was part of my Write Nonfiction Now series. I have a bunch of ebooks, so six books in this series, and they've always just been ebooks. And I decided to revise them, put a little bit of personal and spiritual growth, or mostly personal growth in there, and re-release it with a little new content as well. And I did it with IngramSpark, and I lost my train of thought. Can you believe that?
You were talking about your ebooks, and you decided to make them into paper printed books.
Right. Well, I think where I was going with it, I'm sorry, it's late in the day
okay.
here.
That's fine.
I think where I was going with that was that I just did IngramSpark because that's what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I have the person who started Draft to Digital, it used to be Smashwords.
Yes.
And he said to me, why are you not doing it with Draft to Digital? Because actually, IngramSpark doesn't do a great job with ebooks. And Draft to Digital is set up for ebooks.
Yes.
And so this next time around, I may actually just use Draft to Digital because they'll put me in the Ingram catalog and all that stuff, just like you said, but I'll have better ebook distribution. Like IngramSpark won't even give me a link to sell it.
Wow. Yeah. I used Draft to Digital, and that's the only reason why I knew about them, to do my books. And the only downside to them is you can't get hard copy books through Draft to Digital. You can only get paperback.
So it may be, and these are the things we learn as we go, right? Because even though I'm known as an expert, right, I'm still learning when it comes to self-publishing, especially because things change so much. And like I hadn't self-published in 5 years when I released 2 of my books as print. So they were ebooks, and I did them as ebooks and print. And I did it at IngramSpark, but I think I'm going to research or talk to my colleague, Mark, who started Smashwords, and say, can I go to IngramSpark and do my print book? Because there I can get a sales link and all that I can share, so I can sell right from there if I want to. But then put the ebook up on Draft to Digital because they have a greater distribution and ways to sell. So I don't know. There's so much to know, but I think when I started out, my point when I started all of that was that you can learn how to do it.
Yes.
And there are some people that you can find who are self-publishing experts who will handhold you. You pay them, but they're not getting paid 10K to do this. They're getting paid just to help you get every step done.
Right. Yeah. Let me ask you. So let's say a client comes to you and says, this is what I got. It's my first book, and you explain to them the differences, just like we had that conversation. I'm sure there's some culture shock that happens right there.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the next step if they wanted to work with you? What would be their homework they would have to do?
I don't know if it's homework necessarily, but it depends what stage they come to me hat, Donald. So
Mhm.
let's say, so somebody could come to me and say, I want to write a book. And I
Okay.
keep starting. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I need, a lot of times they'll say accountability, but I'm not an accountability coach. But they're like, I just need to be speaking to someone consistently and have more information on how to write my book. And so they would start with author coaching, and we would have conversations every week or every other week, and discuss it. And they come to me with their, okay, I did this and now I'm stuck here, and but I'm afraid I'm not writing consistently, so that's a personal growth thing. But
Yeah.
we would go through it, and maybe we'd even plan out their book together. Sometimes I get out a mind map program and I help people map out their book from start to finish, so that so I would go through all of that with them. However, now that I've said all that, if I was going to give them homework, I would tell them to go read my other book, the Author Training Manual, which tells you exactly how to approach your book as if it's a business, to make it a marketable book idea. And so this would even be for the novelists, because I
Yeah.
wrote that book for everybody. And so, go learn how to about the audience and about the business side, and begin, even if you're a novelist, using the nonfiction book proposal as a template for your business plan, and create a business plan for your book. And in the process of that, you are going to plan out your book, and you're not only going to plan out your book in terms of content when you know who your audience is, when you know what the competition is, and you've refined your idea based on all of that.
Mhm.
And now you can write chapter summaries, and you can, or an outline for your book, and have it be much more accurate to what you need to write to make the book successful. Because one of the problems is people just sit down and write, and then they have a manuscript that's a mess and isn't marketable, and it needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that's if you haven't written yet, or you only have a little bit, the homework would be the Author Training Manual. Or if they don't want to do that, then we just start working together, and I tell them things that they need to know through the author coaching. If they already have the manuscript done, they might come to me for developmental editing, because I do that. I no longer do line editing, but I can help them with the big picture of their book. Are there redundancies? Do things need to be moved? All of that. And a lot of times with author coaching, people are even coming and saying, well, I'm almost done with my self-published book. It's been edited, blah, 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 but now what? And
Yeah.
we'll talk through marketing and promotion. I never say I'm a marketing and promotion expert, although after my first book, How to Blog a Book, people thought I was. I know more than most. And so I'll teach them what I can about what they need to do to make their book successful. So you could come in at any different time, but you're
Yeah.
probably going to end up in author coaching with me, unless you need me to edit your book. And I only edit nonfiction.
So how many clients would you say, how likely is it that you get clients that have gone through their steps themselves and they submitted books to publishers, and publishers denied them and said, hey, not for us. Thank you for your submission. Have a nice day. Or however they do that. By the time they get that rejection over and over and they come to you, do you find that some of them are taking it personal? That it's like they're being rejected instead of their projects being rejected?
Oh, yeah. People take it personally.
Yeah.
They do, but it's a matter of, like if I'm working with somebody who's pitching agents or publishers, then we're looking at the feedback if we get any. A lot of times you don't get any, but if we
Right.
get anything, we're looking at it, and and so it's not. I said, don't take it personally. It's about the book, and
Yeah.
maybe you and I together don't even have the right perspective on your book. So let's take whatever feedback we get and put it to use. I had a guy who he worked with me for like 2 years. And at first he was trying to blog his book in order to develop platform or the audience. And then we started getting more serious about a book proposal and the manuscript and blah, blah, blah. And he got this one comment from someone about the book. And we took that and we totally rewrote the book. And we
Oh,
were
wow.
like, oh, he even said, wow, I can't believe that that's what they told me, but they're right. And I said, okay, well, then you have to go back to the drawing board. And you have to, I mean, he didn't totally rewrite, but he had to revamp it
Hmm.
and do a lot of revision. And then he had to revise the proposal because the proposal no longer reflected
Yeah.
the way the book was being written and the content. And I mean, the basic content was the same, but we also played with the title a lot. And we finally changed the title. And then he landed an agent without much problem. But
That's
he had to not take it personally. Look, I'm a journalist, so I always say I don't take my words personally at all. I
Yeah.
write them. If somebody says they got to be fixed, it's like more power to you if you want to do it. I'll do it if you make me. But and that's the approach you have to have is
Yeah.
these, because especially if you're working with professionals, if you hire a professional book editor, they don't ever just contact your high school English teacher or something. You need a professional book editor, and probably more than one,
Yeah.
and probably more than one round of editing. Anyway, you have to be willing to hear what they say
Yeah.
because you're hiring them because they're the expert. And
Right.
so why do that if you're not going to listen to them? And
Right.
if your book is lousy, they're going to tell you.
Yep. Yeah.
And you got to be willing to hear that. I had somebody one time, this was when I still did line editing. And so line editing is where you fix every sentence, right? You're
Yeah.
going through and you're looking for all the punctuation and the sentence structure. And a lot of people are not very good writers.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
Oh my God, I rewrote so many sentences for this person so that her book would read well. And, and I did developmental editing as well. And, her comment to me was, do you have nothing good to say? I said, well, first of all, you didn't hire me to tell you the good stuff. You
Yeah.
hired me to tell you what's not working and make it better. If you want somebody who's going to put the gloves on and, tell you how wonderful it all is, that's not me, because
Yeah.
I'm here to make your book better. And so
Yep.
that's what you want. You want an editor who just digs in and says, this is what you need to do. If you want this book to sell and be read and be enjoyed and all those things and to make a difference, this is what you have to do. And then you just
Yeah.
go do it.
No, I agree 100%. I get that same thing with my media company. Our network for podcast, not everybody gets accepted. We have a moral alignment that we go by, and we want shows that align with our niche audience that we have. And, so sometimes maybe people curse too much, or maybe there's just no format or no rhythm to rhyme. And when you explain, hey, that's not a good fit for our network, yeah, they can take it personal, but
Yeah.
it's not. This is feedback that you can go back to your show and say, hey, maybe this is why I'm having a hard time keeping listeners, because there's no rhythm or rhyme, or maybe I'm swearing too much and I sound really uneducated when I'm speaking. Let me tone some of that back. Let me find where my niche is and find an audience that likes this niche and stick with it. But it's not personal. It's
Right. Yeah. And people will say, well, agents, literary agents want to just say no. That's not true. They're looking to say yes.
yeah,
Right. But it has to be a good match, as a client. And it also has to be a book they believe they can sell. And
right.
then it's the same for the publisher. They're not going to back some project that they don't think they'll make money on. And
Right.
so it's really a business decision is all.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I
then
agree.
there's the whole, like in your case too. So I did a radio show for a station,
Mhm.
and it was one of those ones you pay for. So like I paid for a year to be on this station.
Hmm.
And then I did a show that was not as aligned with their politics. And it wasn't that the station itself said anything about politics, but the feedback I got from this particular show from the listeners,
Hmm.
I was floored. And I said, you know what? This is not the place for me. I thought it was, but it
Yeah.
is not. And
Yeah.
I never did another show. I was just like, I'm out of here. And so that's the other thing is you have to realize you have to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Yeah.
a podcasting station or a radio station or a publishing house, you have to be a good fit for them. And if you're not, then it's never going to be easy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's great podcasts out there that are built off of comedy and some explicit comedy and they do great. They just wouldn't do great in our network because our network was built off of more mental health and that type of those types of podcasts, things like this that are helping people learn how to write books and handle things as a business. And putting you in here is not doing you any justice.
Right.
If anything, we're probably
Right.
so. Yeah, I agree. Miss
Yeah.
Nina, why don't you come forward and tell everybody where can they find you, hire you as a client, as a coach, or for editing purposes or anything? How can they get in contact with you?
So almost everything that I have can be found at ninaamir.com. So just NINAAMIR.com. There are some tabs at the top that will take you to writing and publishing, or to personal and spiritual growth. I have 2 programs. One is for writers. It's called the Nonfiction Writers University. You can Google that, or just, as I said, go to my site. I also have a site just for writers called writenonfictionnow.com, and you can find it there. But there's the Nonfiction Writers University. There's also my Inspired Creator Community, which is personal and spiritual growth oriented with a focus on creating what matters. And I do market that to my writers. And more often than not, I have, like mostly writers, 1 or 2 people who aren't writing, because the writers aren't creating what matters to them. And they need the personal and spiritual growth. And because I'm kind of the woo-woo lady and I like all the spiritual and metaphysical stuff, I attract those kind of writers a lot of the time. And so those 2 programs can be found at ninaamir.com. And there's a book page as well. But you can also go to booksbyninaamir.com and find all my books. My newest book, Change the World One Book at a Time, Make a Positive and Meaningful Difference with Your Words, came out in January. And it's available from every bookseller. And you can find out more about that on my site too. So the coaching is there too. You mentioned coaching. You can find out about author coaching. You can find out about editing. You can find out about certified high performance coaching or the transformational coaching. It's all there. And there's also an opportunity to sign up for a free 15-minute session with me. So if anyone's confused and they don't know what they need or can't find it, they can sign up for a free session and we'll have a chat.
All right. Absolutely. I will make sure that every single one of those links are put into the description and make it easy for all of our listeners. I know several of you guys are out there that talk to me about writing books. And, from our other podcast, Spirits and Stories with Donald Dunn, I have decided to make these kind of podcasts now where they're more focused, based off of the feedback that I got, so that you guys can learn a little bit more about the behind the scenes and what it takes and realize the work that you have to be willing to put in. It's one thing to be passionate about a topic. It's a whole nother thing to be passionate and successful. So
It is.
it takes both. So
it does. And since you focus on personal growth, one of the things we didn't talk about, well, obviously spiritual subjects. And so, I'll just leave this here for everybody. And that is that if you want to succeed at anything, but we've been talking about writing and publishing, you have to do the personal growth work.
Right.
Because the only thing in the way of you And whatever you want to create, whatever matters to you, or where you are and where you want to go, the only thing in the way is you. And the way you get out of your own way is with personal growth work. And so you have to step into the identity of whatever it is you want. You can't wait to be that.
Yep.
So if you want to be an author, don't say, I'll be an author someday, and when I'm an author, then I'll write books and I'll do whatever. No, that's backwards. You have to decide today to be an author, and then say, what habits and mindsets does an author have?
Yep.
And then be that person from that moment forward. And that's a lot of the work I do with people. But yeah, I would say, since you mentioned personal growth, that is the crux to success for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You are 100% correct. And, success starts with manifesting it. You have to see it, believe it, and understand what it's going to feel like to know how to get there.
Yes, you do.
I hope all of you guys enjoyed the show. I know I did. Make sure you hit the links at the bottom. Go check out her website. Follow any blogs. Follow anything that she's got, because if you want to be an author, there's the expert to get you there. So y'all take care. Be safe. And I hope all projects become successful for you.
You've been listening to Authors After Action, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their story, and thank you for listening. You can explore more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.